Hello learners, I welcome you all to the second segment of third lecture. In the last video we discussed about regulatory chill, so we saw an introduction to the concept of regulatory chill. In this video I want to talk about what should the state do in order to combat the regulatory chill. So mostly in the context of an obligation on the state to adapt to the scientific developments. Then I also want to end this segment by looking at whether the possibility of regulatory chill is high or not. I want to do that in the context of one case, right? So this is the structure of this segment. So let's delve into the question of is regulatory chill a concept that is real, or is it's only a theoretical construct? So the possibility of a state not adopting a regulatory environmental measure for the fear of the investment arbitration being instituted against it is high, at least in my personal opinion. The theoretical possibility of state thinking in this direction is high, right? But at the same time, there's also an obligation on the part of the states and a duty that it owes to its citizens, to its public, to make changes in its environmental laws and environmental regulation to keep up with the updated research on that area. For instance, there may be many scientific developments, there may be shifts in public opinion, there may be an improved understanding of an environmental risk, its impact and all of that. So with that, a state has to update its environmental law and regulations. If we look at two cases, I am talking about two investment disputes itself, which dealt with the subject matter of these disputes were a result of an improved understanding of an environmental risk. For instance, look at ST Myers versus Canada. The subject matter of this dispute was PCB waste. So PCB waste initially was not, the environmental risk and health risk of PCB waste was not very known to the general public, but then eventually in late 1970s it was found to be harmful to the human health, as well as the biodegradation of the chemical compound was a longer one. So then there was an improved understanding, scientific development was there. So Canada had to update its regulations governing PCB waste. If you also look at Chemutra versus Canada, here also lintane was initially prohibited only in the United States. Then there was at the international level they discussed about the harmful effects of lintane. So I would say there is an obligation on the part of host state to keep itself updated about the environmental harmful effects, and even if it affects the foreign investor, any regulatory measure that the host state may take to keep in consonance with the updated environmental standards that may affect a foreign investor. There may be a possibility of an investment dispute being initiated, but that shouldn't bar a host state from taking that measure. This is something easier said than done, because ultimately it is a host state that has to spend money in defending the regulatory measure. That is why this course is aimed at talking about various strategies that a host state may take, or the countries generally could take, so that environmental principles are effectively reconciled within the field of international investment law. So we can revisit this question. If I ask you if a host state takes a regulatory measure, should it pay compensation to the investor? At this point of time, you may be little dicey about it, right? But at the end of the course, I feel that you will have a clarity with regard to your answer at least. Obviously, we are not in a position to influence the decision makers, right? So at least with regard to your answer, your approach to this particular question. Okay, so then there's an obligation that that clearly exists on the part of the host state to keep updated with regard to the environmental standards. Now, Dolzer and Stephens clearly, very beautifully has mentioned about the dilemma that the government may face, and why the government where the government may take a decision not to adopt an environmental regulatory measure. It's very beautifully captured by Dalzer and Stevens. Please take a look at what Dalzer and Stevens have said. In their opinion, to the investor, the line of demarcation between measures for which no compensation is due and actions qualifying as indirect expropriation that requires compensation may well make the difference between burden to operate or abandon a non-profitable enterprise or the right to receive full compensation either from the host state or under an insurance contract. But from the perspective of the host state, the definition determines the scope of state's power to enact legislation that regulates the rights and obligations of owners in instances where compensation may fall due. It may be argued that the state is prevented from taking such measures where these cannot be covered by public financial resources. So theoretically what we see here is, if we take cue from what Dalzer and Stevens are saying, theoretically we can see that the compensation requirement that is mentioned under an international investment agreement may be the factor that bars the host state from enacting a regulatory environmental measure. Right. So, if we could look at it from the perspective of compensation. So, compensation is something that may act as a bar. So, in case if the host state want to mitigate the risk of falling into a regulatory chill, probably it could also explore other alternatives with regard to compensation aspect. We will discuss more about it in the last week of the course, the 12th week of the course, right, how it could split cost and all of that. So that is something that we can pick up the discussion at a much later point of time. But then you may ask, is it only the compensation requirement that actually could act as an incentive for the host state not to enact an environmental regulatory measure? Some of it could come from the previously decided cases as well. Some of the investment disputes have been decided in such a way where the host state may be little reluctant to take an environmental regulatory measure for the fear of the same decision happening to them as well. So, arbitral tribunal may decide in the same way against the host state as well. For this particular point, I want to cite the example of Santa Elena versus Costa Rica. Here Costa Rica enacted a environmental regulatory measure, and how did the Santa Elena tribunal look at this particular measure and what is the decision that it arrived at can actually authoritatively tell us, right, that the host state is it's not just the host state's assumption that it may get affected by a tribunal's decision, but this is something that could happen in reality too. Let's look at the decision in Santa Elena versus Costa Rica. So, if we look at this case, we could see that the Costa Rica enacted a decree that expropriated the land north of Santa Rosa National Park because this park contains certain flora and fauna of great scientific value as well as great touristic value, and also this particular land was a spawning grounds for sea turtles. So, the decree expropriated this land, and this expropriation decree affected Santa Elena because Santa Elena was developing the property as a tourist resort and residential community. So, then how did the tribunal decide this case? The tribunal stated that in approaching the question of compensation for the Santa Elena property, the tribunal stated that it will consider certain things. What are the things? Firstly, the tribunal stated that international law permitted the government of Costa Rica to expropriate foreign owned property within its territory for a public purpose and against the prompt payment of adequate and effective compensation. This is not in dispute between the parties. Both Santa Elena agreed to this as well as Costa Rica agreed to this. Then the tribunal went ahead and stated that while an expropriation or taking for environmental reasons may be classified as a taking for a public purpose and thus may be legitimate, the fact that the property was taken for this reason does not affect either the nature or the measure of the compensation to be paid for the taking. That is, the tribunal stated that the purpose of protecting the environment for which the property was taken does not alter the legal character of the taking for which adequate compensation must be paid. Please note, this line is very often quoted in subsequent disputes because Santa Elena Tribunal stated that the purpose of protecting the environment does not alter the legal character of the taking for which adequate compensation must be paid. It does not end here. The tribunal gave a footnote in the award. So what did it say in the footnote? It was speaking footnote. The footnote stated that for this reason, the tribunal does not analyze the detailed evidence submitted regarding what respondent refers to as its international legal obligation to preserve the unique ecological site that is Santa Elena property. So the tribunal stated that international source of the obligation to protect the environment makes no difference to the tribunal. And then it further went ahead and stated that expropriatory environmental measures, no matter how laudable and beneficial to the society as a whole are, the tribunal stated that it is like any other expropriatory measure that a state has taken in order to implement its policies. So when a property expropriated, even for environmental purposes, whether domestic or international, the state's obligation to pay compensation remains. And then tribunal further went ahead and stated that there is no dispute between the parties as to the applicability of the principle of full compensation for the fair market value of the property. That is what a willing buyer would be like to pay to a willing seller. And therefore, the tribunal, what it stated was, the tribunal stated that Costa Rica should pay full compensation to the investor, that is Santa Elena. So this case is sort of discussed as a warning, caution tale or a warning that no matter what is the what sort of an objective that the state has, what sort of a laudable environmental objective that a state has, sometimes it may be forced to give full compensation to the investor. So this is a case that I wanted to highlight to show that the possibility of regulatory chill does not exist just in my mind or in some scholars' mind or in the special rapporteur's mind. It's something, the possibility of regulatory chill is actually high. So with that, we will conclude our discussion on regulatory chill, and we can move on to the next concept raised to the bottom in the next video. Thank you.